Hello, I'm Tessa Shepperson of Landlord Law and the Landlord Law blog, and I'm here with my assistant here, Mark, and we're going to answer some of your questions. So, Mark, what is the question for this week?
So for this week, we've got a question from Cindy, who is a landlord, and the question is this. My tenant cannot afford his rent and is growing substantial rent arrears. What can I do?
Right, well, rent arrears, I mean, it's a particular problem at the moment because a lot of tenants have had difficulties with losing jobs due to the pandemic. But I mean, rent arrears has always been a problem. I mean, I've been working in landlord and tenant law for sort of over 20 years and there hasn't been a time when there haven't been landlords who are in arrears of rent. When your tenant falls into arrears, it's really best to go and speak to them immediately and try and sort something out with them. You need to talk to them. If they won't talk to you, that's bad news. But try and talk to them and try and sort things out with them. So there's a number of things that you can do. I mean, if they're working, often a good thing to do is to perhaps alter the date that they pay their rent, so it's immediately after they get their salary paid into their bank account. That's often quite a good one to do, because then they're less likely to pay it to somebody else. And if they're a good tenant and they've fallen on hard times, but it's only going to be temporary, you know, you could perhaps give them a little holiday, perhaps take a lower rent for a period of time. If they're a good tenant, I mean, good tenants are like gold dust. You know, if they're a good tenant, you won't want to lose them. You want to keep them there. So it's worth being nice to them. And then, you know, if they get over the problem and they're able to start paying properly again, they're going to be very grateful to you for having been nice to them. You know, you'll have a grateful tenant, which is always a good thing. Now, if they are in financial problems, there are a number of things that you can actually do to help them, which is the sort of thing that perhaps the CAB or a financial advisor would do, but there's no reason why you shouldn't talk it through with them. First of all, in fact, this would also be of interest to any tenants watching if you're in arrears yourself. First of all, you need to work out which of your people who are in arrears are not normally only in arrears of rent, they've often got other problems as well. So you need to work out what are your priority debts and what are your non-priority debts, because your priority debts are things that you've got to pay, like your rent, because if you lose your home and are made homeless, that's going to be a whole lot more problem. So, you know, you really need to pay your rent rather than the loan that you had from your Auntie Jane. Who's going to be upset if you don't pay her back, but it's not going to make you homeless, you know. So you need to do your priority debts. If you're having problems paying your utilities, have a look at the website for your utility company, because they often have grants to help people who are in difficulties. Maybe you want to check over your tenant's benefit with them, see if they're getting all that they're entitled to. Often tenants won't apply for everything that they're entitled to, perhaps because they've been told by John down the pub that because they're in employment they're not entitled to benefit, whereas you might be, or universal. When I say benefit, I mean sort of universal credit, housing benefit, the lot, you know, some sort of government assistance. If you're working, you may still be entitled to some sort of benefit, so you need to check, and there are places that you can go to check. And we'll put a link to a very good website below this on the Landlord Law blog for you to check. So check that out. The next thing to do is to check with your local authority, because often local authorities have grants that they can pay to help you out, so check that out. And then it's not often known, but there are a lot of companies, charities and other organisations that will help and give some grant aid. For example, if you've got children, maybe a children's charity will help, and you know, so that the children have somewhere to live. Or if you've got a disability, or if you've been in the military, often there are military charities. I think the SAFA and the British Legion is one you can try, or perhaps if you've been in a regiment, your regiment may have a charity that can help you. So there are lots of places that you can go to help. and they may be able to tide you over while, you know, perhaps the tenant's looking for alternative accommodation. So there are lots of things that you can do. Unfortunately, if you're not able to do anything, long term the only thing that you can do is bring a claim for possession, but you really want to avoid that as much as possible. Now, I've been talking mainly about England. There are some differences in Wales. So Mark's been doing a bit of research for me on Wales. So what's the situation in Wales, Mark?
So firstly, I think it's important to discuss that for both England and Wales there is local housing allowances, which is a form of benefit which you should look at your local authority, and there's also discretionary housing payments as well. Two grants which I think are important and something that I think most landlords and tenants should look at. Now, just for Wales, they have the Welsh Tenancy Hardship Fund, which began in the 1st July 2021. This is for any tenant who has accrued over 8 weeks of rent arrears between March 2020 and June 2021. And applications for that should be around mid-July 2021. So if you are a tenant or a landlord and you know your tenant has accrued these arrears, you should really look towards this site because they do have they do give out grants, and we'll of course link that down below.
Yeah, I mean there's been a lot of criticism in England that we haven't got a grant scheme like they have in Wales. But I mean that's the way it is, and if you're in England you have to put up with it, I suppose.
And I suppose these tenancy funds, I mean, because the money will be going to the tenant, but it will be paid indirectly to the landlord, so it will.
Yeah, I mean, some of the grant organisations that I was talking about, you know, the various charitable grants, they will often pay it directly to the landlord,
yes,
I understand, because they want the tenant to have the accommodation. But I hope that's been helpful for you, Cindy, and also to any tenants who are watching there, to give you an idea of the sort of help that's available to you. For landlords and any letting agents who are watching, we do have a special kit, which I think is the Helping Tenants in Arrears kit, which goes through this process in quite a lot of detail, and we'll put a bit of information about that on the page.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching.